go hit mute, and that way I won't say anything.
We're live.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Shelburne Council for Monday, February the 28th. Call the meeting to order at 6:30.
That way I won't say anything.
Playing of our national anthem. And at this time, we would like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. Just a usual reminder to members to declare any pecuniary interest before the matter arises, and that such declarations must be made both verbally and in writing. Minutes from our February 14th council meeting. Can I get a mover and seconder to approve those minutes? Councilor Bernardo, seconded by Councilor Fegan. Any discussion on those? All in favor? Carried. Madam Clerk, were there any questions submitted?
No questions this evening, Your Worship.
All right, so we have one proclamation this evening, and that is for International Women's Week, which is March 7th to the 11th. And the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas International Women's Day is celebrated globally on March 8th, a request is made to proclaim the week of March 7th to 11th with the aim of taking the time to reflect on the contributions women have made and continue to make our communities and countries better places in which to live, work, and grow. And whereas International Women's Day and Week is a time to uphold women's achievements, recognize challenges, focus greater attention on women's rights and gender equality, encourage and mobilize all people to do their part to bring about positive change. And whereas International Women's Day and Week is a time to envision a world where each woman and girl can exercise her choices, such as participating in politics, getting an education, having an income, and living in societies free from violence and discrimination. Now, therefore, I, Wade Mills, Mayor of the Town of Shelburne, do hereby proclaim the week of March 7th to 11th, 2022 to be International Women's Week in the Town of Shelburne. Are there any council inquiries for this evening? I have a couple of updates, but I'll open it up first. Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Thank you. So one inquiry, and then I have something I'd like to share with council. So I'll start with the inquiry, and that pertains to the Victoria Park cleanup. I'd like to know what's happening, where we are, and when we could expect a report back.
Sorry, do you mean 420 Victoria Street?
The area where we're doing the cleanup, yes.
Okay, so we've had a recent meeting. We expect to be coming back in June, if not earlier, with an update report to council on the status of the project and the next steps.
Perfect, thank you. The other item that I'd like to share, I had the privilege to be invited by one of our elementary schools. They wanted to share, their students wanted to share some of the issues that matter to them. And I promised after hearing them, I would share them with all of you. So just quickly for your indulgence, a couple of issues that they shared that they wanted council to hear is that protection for our homeless in the Shelburne community, which is obviously something that we're all concerned about. The second item is making sure that there's a breakfast club so that no child is going to school hungry. The third is taking care of our environment. And the third here is an animal research and development center. And the last one is a pet cafe. So if Councillor Wegner is on, I'm sure that will bring a smile to her face. But a pet cafe is something else they're looking for. So I just wanted to share that with all of you as we strive to hear the voices of our youth. And I guess we could consider these items as we move forward in many of our initiatives. So thank you.
Excellent. Anybody else? No? Okay, so the two items that I have, number one is with respect to the lifting of the emergency declaration, which will be effective as of 12:01 tomorrow morning, tonight. I just wanted to make clear, I know that a press release had been sent out later last week, but I did just want to make clear what this action does and doesn't mean. The emergency declaration, when it was first made in March of 2020, was done as a legal declaration, and essentially that was done to facilitate some additional decision-making authorities during the emergency phase of our efforts against COVID-19. What that emergency declaration was not ever about, in fact, was about public health guidelines, policies, mandates. Those were and always have been policies that are directed by our local public health authority, Wellington Dufferin Guelph Public Health, as well as the province of Ontario. So I just wanted everybody to be clear that with the lifting of our local declaration of emergency tomorrow, both at the town and county level, that really has no bearing on public health guidelines. We will still continue to take guidance with respect to those issues from Wellington Dufferin Guelph Public Health, as well as provincial health authorities. The second item, which I just sort of want to introduce, and we'll discuss it later, but I plan on bringing a motion later on in the agenda tonight dealing with the situation in Ukraine. I have sent an email out to the rest of my council colleagues to let them know that I'd be doing this. And when we get to that spot on the agenda, I will be asking that motion be considered without notice, just given the time sensitivity of it. So I'll leave any further comment until we get to that spot on the agenda. Anything else before we move on? All right, so we have a number of items on the agenda. Most of them, I think, honestly, we can probably get through fairly quickly. But the first is a report from our town planner regarding the Stonebridge Healthcare Site Plan Approval and Zoning Bylaw Amendment. And that is for the 104 Robert Street location. So Steve, there he is, how are you?
Good. Good evening, everybody. So you'll find a copy of my report in your agenda package. It recaps some background information about this site plan and rezoning. It does date back to 2019, and the zoning bylaw was given 2 readings, with the 3rd reading deferred pending site plan approval. Site plan approval is where things stalled, and council did not grant site plan approval, and the matter went to the OLT, or the Ontario Land Tribunal. So you'll see in my report, I've provided some background information about the result of that OLT process. The OLT has ordered that both the zoning bylaw amendment and the site plan be approved, and has sent both items back to council for that approval to approve the zoning bylaw and the site plan. Sorry, the site plan has been ordered approved. The site plan agreement, which is one of the conditions, is the matter before you tonight. So it's the site plan agreement and the zoning bylaw amendment. Sorry, I'm just realizing I've got the wrong graphic in front of me here. Give me 1 second. So bylaw 54-2019 is the 2019 bylaw that was before council for authorizing the site plan agreement with Southbridge Healthcare GP Inc. Again, this is for the site plan identifying 17 new parking spaces on the vacant property at 104 Robert Street for the existing retirement home at 200 Robert Street. And then the zoning bylaw amendment is bylaw 49-2019. And the OLT has ordered that that be approved to rezone the property from R2 to R2 with a site-specific -2 zone to permit the proposed parking area as a permitted use in that zone. The zoning will continue to permit the other residential uses that the R2 zone permits, and that will preserve the opportunity for future redevelopment of the property for residential use, subject to servicing and other matters. The property itself is about 1/4 of an acre. It does have frontage on Owen Sound Street, William Street, and Robert Street. The public meeting was held in August of 2019. And then the OLT hearing was held last year in 2021. The site plan agreement has been updated primarily for 2 things. One, the site plan drawing has been made clear that the sidewalks at both the entrance and exit will be concrete and not asphalt. That was not 100% clear in the drawing previously. And then secondly, that the memorial garden hadn't been outlined on the site plan in terms of the area. So that has been added to clarify that. The site plan agreement itself is a typical site plan agreement and establishes all of the obligations of the owner to complete the works in accordance with the site plan drawings. And then, as mentioned, the zoning bylaw is simply to put the appropriate zoning on the property to permit the parking area. In terms of financial impact, the applicant paid the required application fees back in 2019, and the agreement includes the requirement for the owner to cover the town's costs related to the site plan agreement preparation and enforcement and administration. There are no costs, however, related to the OLT hearing that the applicant would be responsible for. We have reviewed the final site plan drawings with the town engineer just to make sure there's no further technical changes, and they've confirmed that the drawings are satisfactory. You'll find a copy of the final site plan attached to my report, as well as the 2 bylaws and the site plan agreement. And I see that Carol Woodcock for Southbridge is here as well tonight. So between the 2 of us, we'd be happy to entertain any questions, should you have any at this point. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. And before I open it up to questions, I'm just going to point out that Councillor Wagner has been offline. She has declared a pecuniary interest with respect to this matter, and she has filed that with the clerk. Any questions from council members? Councillor Buffett.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. One, with regards to the exit there, where it says there's a large tree to be removed, it appears that that's on the town's property from what I can see. Is there a specific reason why that has to be removed, or is that possible for that to be retained?
Good question. So that tree is a large evergreen tree, and it is on the private property. So it is part of it was discussed at the OLT hearing and previously as well with the applicant, that the reason that tree would need to be removed is it's got a fairly extensive root zone, and there's going to be some regrading in the area of the roots, which will effectively harm the tree, beyond saving, because of the need to flatten out some of the area for the parking area. And it could potentially cause a bit of a site plan issue as well for the exit. Now, there will be there's a landscape plan that accompanies the site plan approval. So although there are 2 trees to be removed from the site, there will be 4 new ones planted. And a new maple tree will be planted a bit further north than the existing evergreen tree, just to stay out of the site plan, or out of the sight line, sorry, within the private property. So there will be a net increase of 2 new trees. Now, of course, those trees will be smaller and will take some time to grow and become, the size that the existing trees are, but there will be a good growing area for that new tree to eventually grow to a mature maple tree.
Okay, and I had a second question relating to, we had a brief conversation just prior to the meeting tonight, and we have a heritage meeting this week, and just wondered if the owners of the property would be adverse to having a historical plaque put on the property in remembrance of the Victoria Memorial Hospital. That was the first hospital for the town of Shelburne.
I can't recall if that had been previously discussed with the owner, or whether Carol would be comfortable responding to that tonight. But I will say that the site plan that the OLT ordered approval of, it did not include that type of feature. It does include a memorial bench or the opportunity to add more memorial features, whether it be benches or other things, primarily with respect to residents of the home. Or former residents, and we can certainly discuss with Carol whether there is willingness to include a plaque recognizing the history of the site, but we can't necessarily require it. So maybe at this point, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll refer the question to Carol, and Carol, if you're not able to answer tonight, that's fine, but something that we can discuss further following the meeting.
Sure. Carol, do you have any thoughts on that at this point?
Okay.
Sorry, Carol, you had taken your mute off, and I'm not sure if you said anything, but we didn't hear it.
The mute button's back on, it looks like now.
She may be having some difficulty with microphone, so that's something I can take back though and discuss with the owner.
So Councillor Buffett, just so I'm clear, the thought would be that there would be a plaque sort of indicating that the park is named after or sort of somehow dedicated to the
Yeah, just dedicated to the original hospital, which was called the Victoria Hospital, which was the first hospital that ever was in Shelburne.
Okay. Yes, Steve, I guess if you could maybe take that back and then follow up with us. When's the Heritage Committee meeting?
This week. So we could pass a motion subject to the approval of the applicant if they are okay with that.
Yeah. Okay. Or structure it sort of as a recommendation.
Yeah.
Considered. Okay. Anything else for Steve? No. Okay. So the recommendation is to receive the report and then for the reading and enacting of the bylaw to enter into the site plan agreement, as well as the reading and enacting of the zoning bylaw amendment. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Donato. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? It's carried. Okay. Next up is another report from our planner regarding a sign variance request for the business located at 171 Main Street West.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a quick couple of slides just to provide the graphics associated to this application, and the graphics are included in my report as well. I'll share my screen. Did that come up?
Yeah.
Okay. So unlike most variance applications, this one is before council rather than the Committee of Adjustment because it is a sign bylaw variance. It's not a Planning Act application. Nevertheless, we still assign a file number and process it by reviewing the information submitted by the applicant. There are no public meetings, however, required for this type of variance, and similarly, there are no appeals. So whatever council decides with respect to the application or request is final. The subject land is located at the west side of the downtown on the south side of Main Street West. So it's a fairly long, narrow property with an existing building fronting at the lot line along the south side of Main Street. It's an existing two-story building with a commercial unit on the ground floor and residential above. The sign is proposed to be located on the front fascia facing Main Street, and it would look like this. So the sign bylaw contemplates kind of longer, wider, and narrower signs that aren't quite as tall. So, wider and shorter signs oriented across the front of the building. And as a result of that, the sign bylaw regulates the height of signs and prescribes a fairly small height requirement of 0.75 meters from the bottom of the sign to the top, which generally includes the logo and the wording, the words that are associated to the sign. This applicant has multiple of these stores, including one in Grand Valley, and would like to maintain consistent branding. So they have proposed a cannabis stop sign with the same layout in a vertical alignment of the three components of the sign, which are the logo at the top and then the two words below. So overall, it is within the maximum sign size requirement. It's just taller than otherwise required. So the bylaw does restrict the maximum area of the fascia of the building that can be used for signage, and it is within that limit. It's just taller than required. The maximum, as it is shown here, versus the 1.34 meters proposed. So summarize, it's section 4.03, paragraph 2D of the sign bylaw that would be granted relief if this application is approved to allow a maximum sign height of 1.34 meters. There are two conditions recommended if council approves this, and one would be to make sure that this is only for this subject property and the proposed fascia sign shall comply with all of the requirements of the sign bylaw, and ultimately shall be subject to the requirement for a sign permit. And then secondly, that if a building permit is required to install the sign on the fascia, that shall be obtained from the County of Dufferin. So I'll pause there and would welcome any questions should you have any.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Councillor Buffett and then Councillor Fegan.
Yeah, I just had a question with regards to the two images that were shown here. One has a white background, the other one has a burnt orange background. Do we have a choice to pick something that's colorful?
They have actually already, the owner has applied separately to reclad the outside of the building with the color that you see there. So there will be the color added to kind of highlight the building.
Well, that makes my day. Because it's nice to be able to realize that we don't have to have all white buildings over there on that side.
Okay, Councillor Fegan.
My issue stems again to the request is almost double the height that is there now, almost, not quite. And I'd like to ask if anybody knows. The Tipsy Fox is a good example. Right now, that's probably the biggest sign that we have from the downtown core. And I don't remember the Tipsy Fox coming to us for variance at this point. Jennifer, if you could confirm for me, maybe I missed that and didn't see it, but do we know how tall the Tipsy Fox's sign is? Just to give us a visual comparison to what they're asking.
Steve Weaver can probably best answer that question. All of those permit reviews go through his department.
Yeah. And I apologize, I don't have that sign at my fingertips, but there were some bylaw considerations with respect to that one.
My biggest concern is that if the Tipsy Fox is within the restriction now, and we're looking at doubling that size, that sign's going to be huge. And I would be concerned about that being a very, I'm worried about setting a precedent essentially on signs that we would be permitting.
I'm just looking here for the information with respect to the Tipsy Fox sign, because we had identified a bylaw issue with that one.
Okay.
And my understanding was that part of that signage, or they had scaled back their signage to meet the bylaw requirements. And I apologize, I don't have their sign graphic in front of me right now, so I'm kind of going by memory here, but they had redesigned it in a way that it complied with the height, or we could consider the components separately and individually rather than as a combined sign with the within the height restriction. So to give some sense of scale, 1.3 meters is somewhere between 4 and 5 feet high.
Right. The problem is that when you have 4 and 5 feet height, when you're standing on the ground, you don't really have a true visual representation of what that's going to end up being. And I can say that from when I put a sign up on Main Street myself. If this sign is going to be twice the size of Tipsy Fox, personally, I'm going to be, or twice the height of the Tipsy Fox. Personally, I'm going to have an issue with that.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, I'm looking at this graphic that's contained in our agenda package, and I'm just wondering that I'm assuming that rendering is to scale.
Yes, that's correct. So, and it does show the overall height is 4'5", and about 8.5 feet off the ground to the bottom of the sign.
Okay.
And 6'6" wide.
Do you see the page I'm referring to, Councillor Fegan? Yeah.
I see it, but again, the problem is that it's a rendering and it's only showing the front fascia of just that unit. It's not really giving a proper visual representation of what we will end up with. And I'm kind of concerned about the size. I mean, we're talking about almost double the height variance. And if the Tipsy Fox is within the proper height variance, if anybody remembers how big that sign is, don't get me wrong, Tipsy Fox looks great. But if we're going to double the size of that sign, that's significant.
Any other thoughts? So, Steve, it's your recommendation that we grant the relief request?
Yes, with those two conditions. That is what we have recommended. Again, just with the thought that based on the drawing provided, it's a appropriately scaled sign based on its area within the overall area, and based on the overall height and size of the fascia. I did find the Tipsy Fox sign. The one difference with that is that is a lower roof line, so you have less vertical space to mitigate the impact of a taller sign. But it is, I'd have to double check if we went through a variance process for this one. It's the main part is 29 inches tall, so a little over 2 feet. But I do see that the word "the" at the top is another 1 foot on top of that. So I'd have to review again how we factored that into the sign bylaw and whether it was done through a variance or whether it was a matter of interpreting the bylaw for that specific sign design. But it does appear to be about a foot or so smaller than the one that's before you tonight in terms of the total height.
Okay. Jennifer?
Sorry, in regards to the Tipsy Fox sign, I do recall they had to remove the word "the" in order to meet the size requirements. Yeah.
Right. In which case it's 29 inches tall, which is within the bylaw requirement.
Councillor Bernardo?
I'm going to agree with Councillor Fegan. When you start getting larger signs that are out of proportion and with the rest of the community, it doesn't look right as you're going down the street. We put the sign bylaw in place for a reason. We didn't just do it at dilly-nilly. And I'm kind of concerned when we start giving variances to it. I'm not going to approve this. I'd rather see it within the sign bylaw and meet our requirements.
All right. Councillor Wagner?
Yes, thank you so much. I guess my question would be, they could still keep their design, right? So that, you know, they keep their branding, but just scale it down a little bit. Like, would that be, you know, would they be okay with something like that? So it still looks the same. It's just, you know, a little bit smaller than per se, you know, the Grand Valley location. I mean, it looks not too bad on the photo for the Grand Valley location, but it's always really hard to judge the actual size when you're just looking at a photo, right? So like for me, I look at it and I'm like, okay, it doesn't look that bad. It doesn't look out of place, but I'm not standing in front of it. So it could be completely different, you know, if you were standing in front of it and you're looking up and you're like, whoa, that's a big sign, right? I mean, I love the wood behind. I'm assuming they're doing the same thing here in Shelburne. So that's very nice. That looks nice. The logo itself is nice. It's clean, fresh lines. You know, I wouldn't mind if, you know, the marijuana leaf was a little smaller and wasn't so predominant, but that's their logo. So I understand that. But yeah, I kind of feel like if they could just maybe scale it back a little bit. Did the Tipsy Fox not want to apply for a variance?
Yeah, they decided not to. We offered that as an option for their specific sign, given they wanted the wording arranged vertically, and I believe that was the case, that they decided not to apply for a variance, in preference just to move forward more quickly.
Okay. Because my concern then, of course, is if we didn't give it to one and then we give it to another, and, you know, it sets a precedent, right? So this is a tricky one. I mean, I don't want to hold them back, but at the same time, I agree with both Councillor Bonato and Fegan, where, you know, we want to make sure things are staying proportionate and look professional as you drive through our town. We have a lot of people who already, you know, have their thoughts and comments on how the downtown core looks, and we're trying our best as council to unify it and, you know, kind of make it look a little bit heritage if we can, and you know, just make it look better. And we don't want to go the other way on that. So I guess I would ask if they would be okay with just scaling it down a little bit to meet the largest, you know, part of the requirement for the bylaw. They can go right up to, you know, that number, but if they can stay just within, you know, the requirements, that would be my request. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Thank you. And I'm inclined to agree with all the comments that were made. I'm going to take another angle on this. So my question to you, Steve, is there are other cannabis shops that are in town. Are there signs within the bylaw? Because if it's not, and then we approve this, it's a larger sign, are we giving them a competitive advantage over those other stores that are in town? So that's my concern. If they fell within the rules and their signs are smaller, and then we grant this, I could see them, coming to council with an issue and a concern to say that we've given them an unfair advantage because their sign is more prominent than theirs.
This is the only variance for this type of sign that I can recall. We do have one other proponent of a similar store on the east side of town that would need a variance for a different reason. So we expect that may come forward to council, and that one was more about the number of signs as opposed to the size. I think, I guess the debate is whether are they exceeding or having a competitive disadvantage based on the size, given that they are within the size limit. It's just that it's not laid out horizontally, it's laid out vertically. And that's the key difference here. Like, that's why I think we recommended, you know, that we could support this because they're still living within the percentage of the building facade that you're allowed to have for a sign and the total area of the letters and logo combined. It's just laid out differently.
Okay, thank you. And I agree. I think it does look nice, but I just wanted to make sure that we're not doing that. So, okay, thank you.
Yep.
For my part, then, I mean, Steve, I think your last comment there was important in that, you know, considering the size of the building, you know, notwithstanding what has been mentioned by some other councillors, it is sort of in keeping with the spirit and intent of the bylaw. I know our sign bylaw is
Outdated.
potentially, you know, outdated at this point.
Yep.
And, you know, we do have the flexibility to sort of stray outside of the rigid guidelines when justified. When looking at the rendering, I mean, I certainly understand what my colleagues are saying, but I don't find it, you know, overly intrusive. I think it looks okay given the scale of the building. But that's what we're here for. And so I guess to give the applicants an answer, we'll give it an up or down vote and see what happens. I mean, I'm more than happy to put the motion on the floor to get it out there and consider it. So essentially the motion as recommended is to approve the request for a variance based upon two conditions. The first of which is that only one fascia sign be permitted. And then the second condition is obviously that a building permit be obtained from the County of Dufferin. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Buffett. Okay. Any further discussion before I call the question? Councillor Buffett.
Could I ask for a recorded vote?
Okay, good point. It'll probably be easier for me to count that way anyways.
So a recorded vote has been requested. When I call your name, please indicate yes or no. Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Councillor Bernardo.
Abstain.
Councillor Buffett.
Yes.
Councillor Fegan.
No.
Councillor Hall.
Yes.
Councillor Wagner.
I'm gonna say no.
With Councillor Bernardo's and Mayor Mills. Sorry, Mayor Mills.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries.
All right. Good discussion. You know, I think that's the reason we have this sort of process and you know, but as always, majority carries the day. So anyways, good discussion though. Okay, thanks, Steve. I guess that's it for you.
That is. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night. Okay, the next item is a report from our CAO regarding the new Shelburne Community Fund to be established through the Dufferin Community Foundation. I think everybody will probably recall the previous presentations from Gord Gallagher regarding this. And the recommendation simply is to go ahead and establish this Shelburne dedicated fund that will be managed by Dufferin Community Foundation. And in order to get that established, the recommendation is that we contribute the first $1,000 from our community grant funding envelope to get that fund up and running. So from there on out, I guess once it's established, then members of the community are able to make sort of directed donations to that fund, which will be used within the town of Shelburne. Denise, was there anything you wanted to highlight from the report? I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Thanks, Mayor Mills. So yeah, I think your quick summary, unless council would like me to present the report and the background based on the presentation that Mr. Gallagher did, and he's with us tonight just in case there's any questions specific to the foundation, It's a fairly simple overview that the mayor just actually provided and thanking him. Certainly, again, I'll take your direction on whether you'd like me to present or whether council would just like to consider the recommendation.
And any questions for Denise or for Gord? No, okay. So the recommendation is to obviously receive the report and to contribute the first $1,000 from the community grant funding to establish the fund. And then obviously just for the reading and enacting of the bylaw to enter into in agreement with Dufferin Community Foundation. So can I get a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Hall, second by Councillor Fegan. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you both for doing that, Gord. I look forward to working with you on the future. I think it'll be a great addition. Is there anything you want to add, Gord?
No, I was just going to say thank you. And yes, we look forward to working with the town and making this grow so that we can benefit the town.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next is a report from our treasurer regarding the year-end development charge update. Carrie.
Thank you. And through the mayor, this is the annual report that is a requirement under the Development Charges Act. Just identifying where we are at with our development charge reserves, where we have spent money in 2021 and whether those were budgeted transfers or outside of the budget. It's basically self-explanatory. If council has any questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, it's just a motion required to adopt the report as presented.
Okay. Any questions for Carrie? Motion then to adopt the report. Councillor Bernardo, second by Councillor Fegan. All in favor? Carried. Okay, Carrie, you're up again for the 2021 year-end financial report.
Yes, so this is basically the fourth quarter report from October 1st to December 31st. And really all it is just updating council on the accounts that were paid during that last quarter, as well as the projects that were awarded. We extended the municipal insurance coverage. The RFQ for winter sand was adopted and awarded. And so was the botanical supply, which is our flowers for downtown and our flower beds for the spring of 2022. So those were awarded. Something new that is actually added as Appendix 4 in this report is the planning letter from BDO. They have started the 2021 audit just last week. And their report sets out any key issues that are relevant with respect to the town's audit. They include their planning report, which includes their approach with respect to testing and risks and identifying those things. The appendix to their report also includes the engagement letter as signed by myself, as well as a letter directed to council with respect to the audit. And that's basically, it was to be put in for information purposes. And since I had this report coming to this meeting tonight anyway, I just added it as the final appendix to the report.
Okay. Any questions for Carrie on that one? Motion to receive that report. Deputy Mayor Anderson, second by Councillor Hall. All in favor? Carried. Okay, and Carrie, your third one, the 5-year capital plan.
Yes, so council will remember back in December when we were presenting the budget, we also presented a draft version of the capital plan. And so what we've done since the budget was adopted without any changes to the capital component, I just found it easier just to include the whole report as as an appendix to this report. I can just highlight a couple of the key things if you like, without totally re-going through the whole report. It is one of the targets under council's strategic priorities and to adopt a long-term financial plan. So what staff have done is, although we had originally set out to do a 10-year capital plan, we've condensed it to 5 just because of how fluid things are right now within the town with respect to projecting future costs. So we've shortened it. We've also, we want to stress that it is a living document, just like any other budgeted forecast. And it is not uncommon to see financial plans that actually do not identify specific funding sources, because at this point in time, they are unknown. The further into the future that a plan goes, it does increase the probability of change occurring, as well as a higher level of uncertainty. And we've witnessed that recently with supply chain issues and the fallouts of a pandemic. It's almost made it impossible to plan too far into the future. And you will also notice that we did include the 2021 draft capital component to the 2021 budget. And then I've also shown what actually happened that year, just as an example of how much things do change. So with this 5-year plan, we've also captured as a placeholder some of the things that we have been speaking about in the last year with respect to potential changes to third-party boards, as well as even looking beyond 2026 with respect to additional growth and the upgrades to the sewage treatment plant. So all those things are somewhat captured, some with values, some without. And as you get beyond 2026, we're also looking at, fire hall expansions and public works yard expansions. Things that this council has already approved as, part of your first year, your first term of council. You're going to see some of those things go full circle, and you're going to be replacing them again within that 10-year period. So with that, we didn't change anything. I do want to point out, though, that when you add up the total for 2022 to 2026, it's just over $74 million. And in the last 5 years leading up to 2022, our capital budget was 11.5 million. So this next 5 years is over 6 times the amount that we've spent in capital in the last 5 years. Out of that 74 million, of course, we all know approximately 35 million of it is the sewage treatment plant alone. So anyway, that's basically just what I wanted to capture tonight. The other thing too is we are looking at a water and sewer rate study again in this calendar year. We've decided to push it off a little bit later in the year, just because we will be having some reports coming to council in March from our engineer with respect to water and sewer and the EA study. So until some of that information has, been introduced to council, we thought it might be a little bit early to start the water and wastewater rate study right away, until we know when we're planning on starting those other projects, specifically in what years. So with that being said, the funding sources that we have identified in this 5-year capital plan, 6% is being made up from the tax levy, 2% is water and sewer rates, and those numbers should be the smaller of the numbers. Reserves is 19%, development charges is 20%, Grants and donations is 12%. And unfortunately, at this point, long-term borrowing is 41% of our costs in the next 5 years. And that's the end of my report.
Thanks, Carrie. As you mentioned, I mean, this was one of the things that the council had identified in our strategic priorities right at the beginning of the term. So, you know, right off the bat, I want to thank you for getting that done before the end of this term. You know, I think the justification for something like this always has been that it's better to plan ahead. You know, even if those plans aren't written in stone. You know, particularly as we're heading into you know, a new term of council next year, I think it's even more important to make sure that there's some sort of roadmap put in place that identifies some of these larger ticket capital items, so that nobody's caught off guard. That's not to say that, you know, this plan may not have to be massaged or changed as time goes on, but at least it gives everybody sort of a, you know, a starting point and a guidepost to work from. So anyways, I appreciate all the effort that's gone into this. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions? No. Okay. Oh, sorry, Carrie.
I just wanted to say as well, by adopting this plan, it's not like you say, it's not set in stone. The annual budget is adopted every year. So next year, a 2023 capital plan budget will come forward for council's approval, regardless of this plan. It just gives staff and council, you know, some indication of what that may look like.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point too, and I think it helps with the budgeting process going forward. You know, each year that you can look a little further than just the year immediately in front of you, and try to plan accordingly, knowing what, you know, is likely to be coming down the pike. Okay, can I have a motion then to receive the report and to adopt the 5-year capital plan on the basis that will be reviewed annually? Councillor Hall, second by Councillor Fegan. In favor? It's carried. Okay, thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.
Is a report from the clerk regarding the 2022 user fees and charges.
Thank you. And through your worship, the bylaw in front of you this evening incorporates a 2.5% increase. To note what that looks like, Schedule B, the ball diamond and soccer field rentals. So the proposed amount $16.55 per game under Diamond A adult. That increase is 40 cents. If you go down to the Thunderfield tournament, $142.85 for an adult, that's an increase of $3.50. There are no changes to schedules C, E, F, G, and H. Those remain the same. And we do expect that the operations review will have an impact on future recommended rates and fees, with council having just received in November the service delivery review and the Grace Tippling Hall revitalization project. Once the operations review has been completed, we'll have some further time to provide some information gathering and bring forward a comprehensive review of the user fees and charges bylaw at that time.
So to that point, Jennifer, I mean, this can be amended at any point throughout the year.
Yes.
Any questions for Jennifer? No. Okay. Can I have a motion then to receive the report and provide for the reading and enacting of the bylaw to amend the user fees and charges? Deputy Mayor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Buffett. All in favor? It's carried.
Thank you.
All right, and lastly is the bylaw to enter into an agreement with the library to provide library services for the town of Shelburne. Jennifer, this is just a routine thing that we do annually, I think.
That's correct. Annually at the beginning of every year.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, can I have a mover and seconder for that then? Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Donato. In favor? Carried. All right. Okay, notices of motion. As I mentioned at the outset, I have one, but I'll defer to anybody else if anybody has a notice of motion to bring. No. Okay. So the motion that I'm presenting, as I mentioned earlier, I am going to ask for council's consideration to deal with this motion tonight without notice. So I think what I'll do is I'll read the proposed motion into the record first, and then see if everybody's okay with that. So the motion that I've crafted is essentially in response to the situation that we're witnessing in the Ukraine. I mean, I think it's fair to say that everybody's been horrified by what we've been seeing, and although any actions that we can take here as a small community may in and of themselves not be enough to change the course of that conflict, which is on the other side of the world. I do think that collectively, if enough voices around the world speak up in opposition to this, that may in fact have the impact that we desire, and hopefully change the course, and that we see better, more peaceful days ahead. So the motion I've crafted reads as follows. Be it resolved that the Council for the Town of Shelburne vehemently condemns the unjustified aggression being waged by Russian military forces against the people of Ukraine, and the Council signals and affirms the support of our community for the Ukrainian people in defense of their freedom, independence, and autonomy. And the Council calls on the Prime Minister and the Government of Canada to continue its efforts in cooperation with the global community to actively and unequivocally oppose this aggression. And the Council authorizes that the Ukrainian national flag be flown at Town Hall as a visual display of our community's support for and solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Fegan. Okay. Is any opposed to considering this motion tonight? Okay. Don't see any opposition. Councillor Fegan as seconder, do you want to make any comments?
I think it's important, as you mentioned, even though we are a small community, the more voices that raise up against these atrocities, the better. So I do applaud you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing this forward, and I'm more than happy to support this motion.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, and anybody else? Okay, call the question then. All in favor? It's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So Jennifer will go ahead and get that flag up then tomorrow morning. I wasn't really planning on having any sort of public gathering to do it. I mean, it's not as though we're reading a proclamation or anything like that. I think we'll just go ahead and have staff put the flag up, and I guess because the motion was silent as to the duration, we'll sort of leave it there until council considers otherwise. My thought would be that we sort of leave it there until the conflict cools down. Okay, thanks very much for the support on that. On to communications, quite a lengthy list tonight in our package. Deputy Mayor Anderson, I see your hand up.
Thank you for that. I just want to pull up item number 3 because it's a good news item, and maybe the public may not be entirely aware. So for those who are watching, to hear that elective surgeries are going to be resuming or have resumed. It's February 22nd. It's now the 28th. So that's fantastic. We all know about the backlog and the amount of people who had to wait. Unfortunately, those even with serious ailments had to wait. And so I'm happy to see, I'm sure we're all happy to see that things are moving forward and hopefully never halted again. The other item, lastly, is number 7 and 8. They're all related, or 8 and 9. And I'm just wondering whether or not I don't know if we've already done so, but if not, do we want to consider the opportunity of lending our voices to the letters that we see there from those respective items. And that has to do obviously with the joint and several liability and the impacts on municipality, increased costs potentially. And so these letters are recommending that the Attorney General, if I'm not mistaken, have this item addressed before the end of their term provincially. So I lay that out there for consideration as to, again, whether we want to lend our voices to that cause.
Jennifer, I think we have in the past, but I mean, this is an issue that is ongoing. I mean, I know AMO sort of beats this drum on a routine basis. Unfortunately, it hasn't really gotten anywhere yet. So I certainly don't think there's any harm in reinvigorating the effort. Councillor Bernardo, did I see your hand up there?
I was just about to say the same as what you said. In the 23 years I've been on council, I think we've done this about 5 or 6 times with motions asking for this because it is a huge, huge cost on us as municipalities. And it has been brought up at AMO. And again, I see no harm in informing this government that it was one of the things at AMO that they said they were seriously going to look at and seriously try to, help us out with it. Remind them of it. To me, it's like a broken promise when a government says it's going to look at something and it doesn't really do anything about it. So, yeah, I'd be willing to. Do we need to make it a form of a motion that Shelburne Town Council supports the recommendations of whatever the other municipalities are? I can't think of their names off the top of my head right now.
Elgin and South Glengarry. Yeah.
Yeah, regarding the issues that they have brought forward to the government for liability and whatever the wording there.
Okay. So what I would suggest, Deputy Mayor Anderson, you raised it, so I'll put you down as the mover. Councillor Bernardo, I'll put you as the seconder, if that's okay.
Fine. Yep.
Any discussion on that, or does anybody have any questions about what it's referring to? Okay. All right. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Anything else from the communications list? Councillor Fegan.
I'm kind of wondering how the rest of council would feel if we pulled out 4, 5, and 6 as well. These are letters from other municipalities who are requesting the dissolution of the Ontario Land Tribunal.
Yeah.
Now, what these letters are talking about is the fact that we as municipalities, we go through significant efforts to work on the beautification of our town. We know the people of our town, we know what we want the towns to look like, and we make bylaws for that. And the land tribunal is just simply another bureaucracy piece of red tape where landowners can simply bypass laws that we make. And for me personally, I think I would like us to lend our voices once again with these other municipalities, trying to push the motion to dissolve the Ontario Land Tribunal.
Councillor Bernardo, are you going to second that?
Yeah, I will. Tonight, one of the issues that we dealt with is one of the reasons that the Ontario Land Tribunal should be dissolved. They don't follow necessarily or understand the issues that a municipality is dealing with and the wishes of the people of the municipality. Here we have a government that's pushing for housing. We have a perfect lot where housing could have been put on. What are we putting on it? Asphalt. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we need the OTL.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the floor to support resolution from the municipality of Mallory Town, City of Sarnia, and Town of Halton Hills regarding the dissolution of the Ontario Land Tribunal. Anybody else want to chime in on that one? All in favor? Carried. Okay. Anything else on communications? No. Okay, can I just have a general motion then to receive the other items? Councillor Hall, seconded by Councillor Buffett. In favor? Carried. We'll close session. So confirming bylaw, can I get a mover and seconder to? Okay, Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Hall. All in favor? Carried. And a motion to adjourn. Councillor Hall, seconded by Deputy Mayor Anderson. All in favor? Carried. All right. Thank you all. See everybody